So I'm probably not going to be doing as many vlogs during the month of June as I did during May. A big part of why I was able to do so many in May is that I'd finished a lot of my work for that month pretty early, and I haven't finished any for this month yet. So I'm going to be really working hard at the main channel for a lot of June, but I figured I'd throw a vlog out there both to say that and just to have something to come out in the next few days. And I really enjoyed doing those videos about Death Note and Code Geass and Naruto and Bleach because it was a good way for me to get my thoughts out on popular shows that I don't think I have any plans to talk about on my channel, like, ever, possibly. You know, I have a tendency to feel like I want to cover, like get my thoughts out there on every show ever, but there's a lot of them that, like, the amount of reward I would get from, like, rewatching the show all the way through and talking about it is just not worth it. Like, I'd rather be working on other stuff, and so if I can just get these things off my mind and not have to think about them again, then it really takes the weight off of my shoulders going forward. It's especially great for, like, really popular shows. And there's a lot of popular shows that I will probably talk about eventually. So, like, you know, something like FMA Brotherhood, like, I'll probably make a video about one day. So I'm not going to cover those in this way, but to get into a few more of the really popular shows that I don't really plan to cover. One is Attack on Titan. I kind of already said, like, a bit about this in my video about the director, who also did Death Note and other stuff. You might probably seen that video. I don't know. Maybe you haven't. But I talked about it just briefly, that I had dropped the show after 5 episodes, and a lot of people were like, how could you do that? And Attack on Titan does not interest me. I was not grabbed by it in the way a lot of people were, which is funny because I wasn't. Like, at first I thought, because, like, when the trailers and stuff came out, I thought it looked fucking awesome. And like, there was like, I'd heard about it for years. Like, the manga had been hyped up. Like, I knew people who thought it was, like, one of the best manga that was currently running. So I was, like, kind of excited for it. And I also was under the impression that it was, like, really full of super hot girls for some reason. Because I'd seen, like, all this fan art of the characters that's actually way better looking than the actual show. Which was really funny. Because, like, I was under the impression the show was known for, like, these giants, for being pretty dark, and for having, like, really gorgeous character designs. The latter of which is not true at all. And I guess I just thought it had, like, a bigger storyline. Like, that it was about more things than it really is. Because it's really more of, like, a straightforward us versus them kind of thriller with a little bit of a mystery angle to it. It gives me very, like when people were saying it was the Japanese The Walking Dead, or the anime version of The Walking Dead, I kind of agree. Like, that's the impression I've gotten, and I hate The Walking Dead, so it just doesn't work for me. Like, I feel like the selling point of Attack on Titan is that people die. Like, that seems like what people were attracted to with it. It's like, the first episode, the main character's mom dies. You know, then you get, like, lots of minor character deaths and stuff. You know, the main guy gets really fucked up in, like, episode 4 or 5. And it's like, you get this sense that it's like, people like this show because characters die in it. But none of the characters are interesting or, like, fun to watch. I remember, like, because I watched the first 5 episodes, like, while they were airing, and there was, like, the one girl whose thing was that she was into bread, and she was, like, the most likable character in the whole show. Like, the first character that had any spark of humanity was just this real weird girl who eats bread a lot, and that was it. Like, I think that kind of, like, liking that character made me even more realize how much I wasn't into the show. That, like, I didn't care about anyone, you know, like, you've got Mikasa, and it's like, she's cool because she's, like, strong, and that's it. Like, there's nothing else to her personality, that she's just stoic and strong, which would be enough to carry a character in, like, a show that has other strong characters. Like, personality-wise, she kind of reminds me, for a really weird comparison, of, there's a manga and anime series called G.A. Geijutsuka Art Design Class, and, it's like a slice of life, like moe comedy show, but like one of the main five girls is like the stoic, like hard ass character, kind of like Mikasa, and but in that show, everyone else is like a colorful, fun, wacky character, you know. So her being like the counterpoint to all that is what makes her character work and makes her funny. Whereas in Attack on Titan, like everyone's just kind of emo and dour all the time, and Mikasa's just kind of there, like she's like a brick in a sea of other bricks or something. Um, yeah, and the thing is, the show has beautiful moments, but by and large, and not much. Like a lot of the times, it's just static shots of people fucking talking. You know, even in the first episode, you get like this really beautiful opening sequence of like this fighting going on, and like the fight animation looks incredible, but a lot of times it's just confusing because it's just characters fucking whipping through the air like crazy. There's not a lot of choreography to it, so you'll just see characters fucking whipping around, doing all this crazy Spider-Man shit, and then like it, you know, it goes to the whole scene with Eren in the town, and like which is the bulk of the episode, and it looks terrible. Like most of it is static shots of people yelling at each other, like awkward animation when there is even animation, lots of speed lines just to make scenes look dramatic, you know, like a character starts yelling and there's a bunch of lines on screen to add emphasis. It looks stupid and terrible. And a lot of the shows like that. It like really bounces between these incredibly high quality moments of animation and then just nothing for long stretches. And I remember it was like, I think it was episode 4 where there just wasn't anything. Like there was no big action scene. There was, maybe it was 3. There's one episode where the whole thing was just boring and lame and nothing really happened. There was a lot of characters talking about shit I didn't care about. And I was like, I don't, this is not holding my attention, you know. Didn't think Eren was interesting as a main character. And then once I heard about the fact that he like just turns into a Titan, I was like, oh, okay. Like kind of defeats the entire point to me, that it's like, you know, puny humanity against giant monsters, but we have the technology to try to fight them. It's like, no, we just got guys who turn into giants too. Oh, okay. You know. And then like I hear like half the characters are fucking Titans. I don't know. None of it interests me. Everything I heard about the show, about like what happens later, sounded like I wouldn't be into it. And I really can't stand shows that just withhold information from you forever in the hopes that you want to know. Because, you know, like, for some people that works, like, oh, what's in the basement? Ooh, I'm like, I don't fucking care what's in the basement, because the answer will never be interesting enough to live up to the hype of it. You know, like, whatever's in there, the show doesn't have a complex enough plot that it could be like a skeleton key to unlock everything. It's like, it's just gonna be something stupid that'll probably seem obvious in retrospect, or feel like a total ass pull. You know, it's gotta be one or the other. Yeah, it's just really not my kind of show. I hate how everything's just brown. Everything in the show is fucking brown. I've seen screen caps where, like, when I was making that video about it, because I made like a fake review of the show for April Fool's last year, and I kept going on about how brown it was, and there's just shots that are just all brown, everything. Ugh. Not a big fan of brown as a color anyways, but like just the way it's done is like, Jesus Christ, I'm in a sea of fucking brown. Yeah, just I hate the uniforms. Like I hate that everyone wears the exact same thing. Like I can't stand that in any show where that's the case. I'm not a big fan of school uniforms in general. I'm not a big fan of like any kind of everyone's wearing the same fucking thing. I appreciate what it does mimetically, that it makes it very easy to cosplay the show and to have like this, you know, I feel like that's a big part of shows that are like really big in popularity for cosplay, is like having any kind of uniform, because it means that you basically are a character in the show. Like you don't have to be one of the existing characters. You can just wear an Attack on Titan jacket and you're cosplaying Attack on Titan, you know. And you see this a lot with, like, Owari no Seraph had popular uniforms, you know, those Akatsuki people from Naruto and, like, all these different things. The Bleach, Soul Society things, you know. I think I think it contributes a lot to a show if you have something kind of mimetic like that, because it also helps people to like make their own original characters and their self inserts and stuff like that. So you know, it's good for fandom type stuff. But yeah, it was really funny when Attack on Titan came out though, because like the kind of like the interactions I have with other anime fans have changed considerably over the years. Because like at the time when I was writing an anime blog, like I was mostly reading blogs from people who were like really deep into anime and know everything, and they were mostly watching like more obscure shows or like, you know, new seasonal stuff that was not necessarily whatever the most popular thing is. So I'd gotten used, like, in that crowd, Attack on Titan wouldn't have really been talked about, because we would have kind of seen it as, like, okay, this is, like, a mainstream show. This is the one that's going to be on Adult Swim in a year, and nobody would have really talked about it. But when Attack on Titan was airing, I wasn't really following anime stuff. I was following MLP stuff, and it just so happened that the people I knew in that community were all watching Attack on Titan. So I was hearing about it all the time. Like, it seemed like everybody was super hype about the show, and I was just like, what the fuck is happening? Like, why is everyone watching this show I'm not even that interested in? And then I realized it was because I wasn't following big anime fans. But then it's funny now, because now I'm a YouTuber, and most of my interaction with anime fans is through my comments, and there's people from every, like, walk of life of anime watching my videos. There's people who don't know anything, and there's people who are super hardcore. So, you know, I still get a lot of Attack on Titan fans, like, watching my content now, whereas I really wouldn't have seen it at all back in the anime blogger days. So, it's just funny because it's a show that could have, back then, totally flown under my radar. I never would have talked about it, never would have heard about it. But because of where I was when the show came out, it was like overwhelming how much people were talking about this show. And it has become like the second most or third most popular anime ever, according to Mal, and just you see it everywhere. So yeah, I don't know. I get why people are into it, because it's hype. It's hype and fun, and it plays on very basic, you know, emotions. Like, there's giant evil things, and they're eating everybody. It's scary and weird and cool, and they're on giant flying contraptions, but the actual show's not that interesting to me. So then the next one I want to talk about is Elfen, which probably isn't as well known now, but back when I was in high school, that was one of the shows that, like, Elfen was like the weirdest show, because it was like the only one that was not on Adult Swim that a lot of people had seen, because it was infamous for how insanely violent it was, and, like, you know, just constant nudity and violence. So it was one of those things that every 16-year-old wanted to see, you know, because it was like so crazy and out there. And I remember watching it in like early 2007, I want to say. I think someone might have loaned me the DVDs, like a classmate or something like that. But, so it was before I was watching fan subs. And I remember watching it, and I had enjoyed it at the time, like, mildly. Like, I wasn't big into it. I didn't think it had, like, much of an emotional impact on me. But I thought the themes of it were interesting because of the fact that it dealt so much in these, like, violent and sexual things. Like, there was one character who was, like, this little girl who was being, like, raped by her stepfather and stuff, and, like, I'd never seen that kind of stuff before, so for me it was, like, really interesting just to be like, whoa, sexual abuse, that's a thing that shows can talk about, you know? Like, I'd never seen that, and, you know, there was so much violence, but it was so, like, cartoony in a way. Like, it's funny, because for me growing up, I never watched anything particularly dark. And it wasn't until, like, a year and a half after Elfen that I really got into, like, darker shows and, like, grittier stuff. So, with that show, I think it was so over the top that it just didn't even affect me, because it was like, this is just corny, you know, the carnage is, like, hilarious, and the fact that the show is so overwrought and so ridiculous. But then I also hated a lot of it. I hated everything with Lucy. I thought she was just the worst character. Like, the whole split personality thing was stupid. The fact that the one was so obnoxious and just peeing everywhere. It's such like an obvious like weird fetish thing, you know. And the guy who writes Elfen Lied, everything he writes is just like, what the fuck, dude? Like it's all weird and fucked up. And like at one point I read like a manga that he did that was about like a girl who's trying to become a professional skier. It's like a sports manga, but it was like this weirdly dark, fucked up sports manga, like where like every opponent was like trying to really fuck with the main character girl, and they'd like torment her and like try to kill her and all this stuff and like just do all this really mean, fucked up shit. And I was like, what is this? Like, this is the least enjoyable sports manga I've ever seen. It was really bad. And then Brunhilde in the Darkness, which is like equally grimdark, stupid bullshit. If I saw Elfen Lied now, I'm almost certain I would think it was fucking atrocious. Like, everything I remember of it is stuff that is like, just, there's like a part where these kids like murder a puppy in order to make Lucy go crazy and like murder everyone in a fucking elementary classroom. Like, it's the literal definition of what edgy is, and not in like I don't mind edgy. I like things that are like kind of dark and fucked up when there's a good reason for it. But there's no reason in this case. It's just edgy for the sake of itself. It's just how dark can we possibly make a story? How fucked up can we possibly make things, you know? And try to make it all sympathetic and shit, and it just doesn't work. It all falls totally flat. Lucy's fucking obnoxious. Nana's fucking obnoxious. Nana's Everyday Life, the webcomic, is better than Elfen Lied by a long shot, because it actually embraces how stupid it is and, like, plays it up to 11 with the dark, cynical, fucked up stuff while being, like, disgustingly funny about it. If you haven't ever read that webcomic and you've seen Elfen Lied, I recommend it if you want to ruin your day. But, yeah, it's stupid. It's a dumb show. I really think it's the kind of thing you can only really appreciate when you're a teenager and you haven't seen this stuff yet. When it's like, that level of violence is still like, whoa, I can't believe I just watched 40 people get murdered in 15 minutes, you know, by a naked chick. It's like crazy. And then you get older and you're like, whatever, dude, I don't care. People die when they are killed. Whatever. It's not impressive. It's not funny or cool. It's just like, yeah, that's happening, you know. Now the girl's peeing on the floor. Why am I watching this? So I have no interest in, like, revisiting Elfen Lied. I'm sure it's stupid. And I know that Endless Jess, or My Japanese Animes, plans to eventually cover it because he thinks it's like the worst thing ever made. So I look forward to his video on it. And then lastly, what was the last one I wanted to talk about? Oh yeah, the last one I wanted to mention is the 2003 version of Full Metal Alchemist. I think I've made it kind of clear in my my video on, like, Hunter x Hunter that I am not the biggest fan of the 2003 Full Metal Alchemist. I definitely think Brotherhood's a better show. But I do think that the original has, like, a lot of interesting stuff. Like, FMA 2003 had, I would say it's better directed. It has more interesting directing. It has lots of, like, interesting cinematography and ideas. There's some of the new scenes that they added in are better. Like, people always talk about how a lot of people who watch Brotherhood who have seen the original don't like Brotherhood as much because the Show Tucker scene is way less emotional because you have way less time with them, and the Hughes Mize Hughes scene is way less emotional because you have way less time with them. And I agree, but those scenes just aren't as important in Brotherhood. They happen really early in the story, and then later on you meet other characters who you do get really deeply involved with and who have really emotional scenes later on in the show. So I would agree that the 2003 versions of the Show Tucker scene and the Mize Hughes scene are way more gripping and emotional and built up better, and they're super memorable, especially if you experienced them way back then. But if you watch Brotherhood and don't think of it as the same show again, you know, where those scenes happen way earlier in the show, then there's those are just set up to what's going to happen later. The real big emotional gut punches that you're going to get later in the show. I do think I think the best thing that happened in the 2003 version that was lost later was the Bury the Chopper episode, just because the whole scene with Ed, like, flipping shit without his arm and, like, really experiencing fear and, like, that feeling of, like, remembering that he's just a child when he doesn't have his alchemy and his arm is a great scene. But I think everything after the halfway point in the show is, like, what the fuck was going on? Like, all the new original content ideas are batshit insane. There's one part where when they go back to Ishvala and, like, Scar, like, I think he makes the transmutation, transmutes the entire city into a fucking Philosopher's Stone or whatever. That part was awesome. Other than that, I hated everything about the second half of the show. It got way convoluted. I thought Dante was the worst fucking villain ever. Tons of plot holes and just weird shit. Frank Archer. Anytime someone talks about Fullmetal Alchemist 2003, I have to remind them of Frank Archer. If you don't remember, type into Google Frank Archer and look at him and remember what he was. This is a guy who's like this random ass rival character who gets killed off, and then in the second to last episode, they resurrect him as this hideous mech creature. This, like, half mecha, half man, terrible design. And he spends the entire episode looking for Roy Mustang, so that after Roy Mustang kills, like, one of the final boss characters, then he leaves the house and Frank Archer shoots him in the face before Frank Archer gets killed again. All just to make you think that Roy Mustang is dead, even though he isn't. They show him at the very last second with, like, an eye patch. So it was fucking pointless. It is the worst thing ever. It's so bad, I can't believe it made it into the show. It's, like, baffling how crazy and stupid the entire Robo Frank Archer part is. It's the stupidest thing ever. And there's just lots of dumb shit. I wrote, like, when I watched the 2003 version, I wrote, like, a post about how stupid I thought the ending was on my blog. And I've been linking that to people whenever they ask about it. There's a ridiculously long comment thread where, like, people got into an argument that lasted a year or something, hilariously. So there's that on there. But, yeah, like, I do think there's a lot to be said about the 2003's version's strengths, especially in its directing and animation. I do think that Brotherhood is a lot more flat, because Brotherhood is, like, pretty clearly just, like, a straightforward adaptation of the manga, where there's a lot of scenes that just feel flat and boring, because they weren't, like, paced well for TV. They're paced just awkwardly, especially in the early part of the show. Like, the first 13 episodes flow really badly. I think it picks up once the story gets more interesting, and there's lots of amazing animation in there. It's just not consistent through the show. There's lots of parts that just kind of look boring and shitty. But, and the 2003 version has some interesting ideas. If you talk to Goat Jesus, he likes the 2003 version more. He's written a lot of analytical stuff about them over on his channel, about, like, both shows and Conqueror of Shambhala. And, like, I've had times where I thought it would be interesting to watch both FMAs and read the manga and do, like, a big comparison, what all each of them did right and wrong. But, like, I'm just not really the guy to do that, because I don't really care about the 2003 version. Like, I'm not interested in watching it again, because for all the strengths it has, I think a lot of the filler stuff in the early part is terrible. Like, the episode with the two other Elric brothers, that was fucking stupid. The episode where they go to, like, a village and there's, like hide and seek. I don't remember exactly. There's some stupid early the one with the thief lady is pointless. You don't need it. Like, there's a lot of dumb filler episodes, all of which have the same exact message. The message is always, they're just like Ed. It's dumb. And then the second half of the show is a fucking nightmare clusterfuck. So, Yeah, I would say that I don't feel like going back and watching it and doing that comparison. Other people can do that. It's really not my realm. I could do some Brotherhood videos though, just because I do really like that show, and there's a lot of stuff I could say about it. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on those 3 shows. Hope you enjoyed. Probably won't be doing too many vlogs this month, but look forward to my regular videos. Yay!